Greetings, loved ones. Psychological abuse is common, and yet few understand that's the psychological abuse definition enough to spot it. Without visible signs of physical abuse, psychological abuse can stay hidden for years. Today, we're going to define psychological abuse and talk about signs and symptoms. Help us get these messages out. Please subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and hit the like button and the notification bell. And please share these messages with others. You could save a life. Psychological abuse. I'm going to talk about its definition, the signs, and the symptoms. As I said in the intro, psychological abuse is common, and yet few understand the psychological abuse definition enough to spot it. In situations of abuse, when it becomes known that physical abuse is happening, you can be absolutely sure that psychological abuse has been happening for a long time. Pretty much all abuse goes hand in hand with psychological abuse. Without visible signs of physical abuse, psychological abuse can stay hidden for years. Psychological abuse, though, can be just as devastating as physical abuse. Psychological abuse can affect your inner thoughts and feelings as well as exert control over your life. You may feel uncertain of the world around you, unsafe in your own home. And psychological abuse can destroy intimate relationships, friendships, and even your own relationship with yourself. Psychological abuse also applies to children and may impair their development into a healthy adult. So let's talk about the signs and symptoms of psychological abuse. They begin small at first as the abuser tests the water to see what the other person will accept. But before long, the psychological abuse builds into something that can be frightening and threatening. So let's look at a list of signs and symptoms of psychological abuse. May include name-calling, such as "you're an idiot" or "you're worthless." Psychological abuse includes yelling, constant situations where instead of talking, the abuser is constantly yelling about everything. Insulting the child. This is degrading comments meant to diminish the person's identity and self-esteem. Then there is threatening the child or to take away something that is important to them. These threats are a powerful way to control a person. Other psychological abuse is imitating or mocking the child. Mocking is a subtle form of verbal assault. The victim is traumatized by the initial attack, then typically invalidated and left with emotional and psychological pain left unresolved and creating in them physical stress likely to be at the core of most illnesses. Psychological abuse includes swearing at children. Causing harm to someone through abusive actions, which include swearing at someone, is a form of abuse. Consider each hateful word a kick into the stomach of the child. Consider each nasty name a punch in the mouth. And then there's ignoring children. The silent treatment involves such actions as refusing to speak to someone, not acknowledging what they say, pretending that you can't hear them, distancing yourself or avoiding their company as if they were contagious, ignoring their expressed requests or needs, or any kind of behavior that seeks to make a person feel invisible or invalid. It is related not only to an expression of passive violence, but also to a concealed strategy of psychological abuse. That is to say, it can profoundly damage the person on the receiving end. Another form of psychological abuse is isolating children. Isolation, either physical, social, or emotional, is often used to facilitate power and control over someone for an abusive purpose. This applies to many contexts such as workplace bullying, elder abuse, domestic abuse, child abuse, and cults. Isolation reduces the opportunity of the abused to be rescued or escape from the abuse. Another form of psychological abuse is excluding children from meaningful events or activities. Social exclusion and peer rejection are pervasive phenomena in children's and adolescents' social interactions. Exclusion and rejection can occur for a myriad of reasons and Although exclusion may not always be intended to cause physical harm, experiences of exclusion can have detrimental outcomes in terms of emotional and behavioral health, academic difficulties, a decrease in prosocial behavior, and low self-esteem. According to the CDC, over half of all children in the world, that's 1 billion children, ages 2 to 17, experience violence every year. The question is not if you're going to encounter a victim of violence. The question before God is, what will you do when you do encounter them? You could be the person who saves a life. You are called. We are all called to be champions for justice. If you're a victim of violence, listen to me. I want you to know that you are valued, you are loved, you're intelligent, and you are worthy. God does not want you to suffer violence. He wants you to live free from violence in peace and tranquility. There is a way out. It's not your fault. Abuse is not love, and you are not alone. If you're suffering violence, reach out to someone today. If you find yourself in a dangerous situation, call 911 for help. And if you know of a child or other person suffering violence, tell the authorities. In our next episode, we will talk about the effects of psychological abuse on a child's mental health and well-being. Until then, God bless you.